it's really good to see you.
Nice
Yeah.
to see you guys.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah.
Good.
Charlie, you're in Bushwick?
I am live from Bushwick.
I heard they're having outdoor concerts at like Birdie's or somewhere like that.
I'm not aware of that, but I'll check it out.
I know Birdie's is jumping because they have outside. Well, everywhere it's like that.
Yeah, it's all on the sidewalk now.
These elaborate, Susan, you've probably seen in these elaborate outdoor restaurants.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
But
Yeah.
what happens in November? I don't know.
We
Yeah.
don't know. We don't know. We'll have to dine in our furs.
Well, in Paris, they sit in those outdoor cafes all year round. It's freezing.
We'll let them know. We'll remind them of that.
There's a bar next to me, and it's, you know, you've never really noticed who sits in that bar because you don't see them. But now they're outside, and when you walk through it, like the sidewalk goes through it, and you're like, this is like a degenerate bar. Like these people are crazy.
Ray, I've been spending the afternoon listening to your songs.
To
It's been
Bushwick
so
Book
fun to like listen to your Bushwick Book Club songs. Do you remember the first one you ever did?
It was that it's I'm blanking out on the author.
Negin
Fahrenheit,
Farsad?
the guy who wrote Slaughterhouse-Five, Vonnegut. It was
Oh,
Vonnegut memoir.
oh, okay. I didn't get
Oh,
as far back as that. But
That was the first one.
like, what do you remember about it?
Um, I remember like not knowing how to do it and like just like looking at it and going, not knowing where to start. And then I just started riffing on it. And it's really like it's more about me. And then in the middle of the song, I say, have I made this enough about myself yet? And I got a lot of laughs on that song. And I talked about like having sex like when I was very young with a Supreme Court, Nixon nominated Supreme Court justice, and just I in Bushwick Book Club songs, for some reason, whenever I do a Bushwick Book Club, I never talk about that stuff, but in the Bushwick Book Club things, I always wind up talking about sex when I was very underage with like older men behind the Bushwick Mall.
that's
It's true.
interesting.
It works for your Bushwick Book Club songs. It really does.
But
I
where
really
does it,
did. I really did think that you probably talked about that in all your songs.
no, only
What?
it's like two Bushwick Book Club songs.
So that's the difference between your regular set and your Bushwick Book Club sets, right? Is that for Bushwick Book Club, you know, you bring out the stories about the underage sex.
Yes. And that and I'd kind of forgotten about that until I started just talking because I would get out of school at I think 2:30 we got out of school, and then the mall was next door to my junior high school, so I would hang out at the mall, and then my father would pick me up at 5 o'clock or 5:15 when he got off work. So between 2:30 and 5 o'clock I had all kind of misadventures at the mall.
Wow.
And
I want to
a lot of
hear
kids,
I want to
I
hear a
mean,
whole album of songs just about all those misadventures. That's another
I mean, some
concept.
of it was like smoking cigarettes or smoking weed, but in my case, it was like I discovered this whole like gay cruising scene, like just by accident,
And where was that?
in the Northwood Mall in Tallahassee, Florida.
Uh-huh.
It's no longer a mall. It's like they turned it into offices because there's no malls anymore.
Like what music were you listening to then?
Elton John, Paul McCartney, like top 40, the Beatles. And what albums did I have at home? Like I had a lot of Beatles and Elton John, 73, 74. I didn't write songs till I was much older in life, but then I had an epiphany moment in my life. For my 15th birthday, I asked for Paul McCartney's latest album, which was like Venus and Mars, I think. And there was an album, Blood on the Tracks, that I didn't know who this guy was, Bob Dylan. And I liked that song. It was on the radio. And for some reason, my mom got me Bringing It All Back Home. Like
Oh.
some accident, like some hip record store clerk or just dizziness, like just picked up whatever. But I always wonder, like, if I'd gotten Blood on the Tracks, I don't think my life would have changed, but it changed like that night when I put that needle down. And there was like, I was like very shy and didn't have many friends at that time. And my mother threw a surprise birthday party with all these people that like I wasn't friends with. And I just sat at that thing, ignoring them, just listening to this, like, Bringing It All Back Home, just like mind blown. And then within like a month, I had like Highway 61, Blonde on Blonde, and then and it became, and from that, like got into like just reading everything about Dylan. And then Patti Smith came out that January, and then I just went down like a wormhole with like Burroughs and Ginsberg and Warhol and New York Underground and all that stuff. And then in April, Dylan came to my town. Like he wasn't even touring. And my sister said, "You know that weird guy you like? He's playing our sorority dance." And I was like,
Whoa.
Dylan playing? And it turns out it was like, back then they called them Greek. It was like fraternities and sororities. They had a dance, and Dylan was doing the Rolling Thunder Review, and they booked him for their sorority dance. And then there was all this, people were upset about that, but so they just had it at the gym. So it was like at the local
Went to
gym.
that show.
And it was, that's when tickets were like open, or whatever you call it, concert festival seating. So if you just ran, you got to the front.
That's awesome.
So in that year, like I became a Dylan freak, and then he came to my little town. And then my French teacher suddenly appeared on the stage and jumped off the front of the stage. And the next day I said to her, "Did I see you at the Dylan show?" And she said, she looked like Scarlett Rivera. And she said, "Yeah, I went backstage and I had a big magnolia flower. And I told them I was Scarlett Rivera, and they let me in. And the first person I ran into was Joan Baez. And she's like, 'Can I help you?' And she's like, 'I have this flower to give to Bob.' And she's like, 'Well, come with me. He's right here.' And they took him in and they talked a while. And then she's like, 'How do I get out of here? How do I get out of here?' And they're like, 'That door.' But that was the door to the stage. That's how they got out of there. So she's suddenly on the stage, and then she just jumped off.
It sounded like a stage dive, how you described it, but
It was maybe 3 feet tall.
I'm imagining this happening to you, not your teacher, but this is actually Ray, and he finds himself on stage and does a stage dive. That's how the story goes.
What an amazing year, though. I mean, it's such a weird sort of like confluence of events that's how it started,
Yeah, and I always wondered if I didn't get that record, like what, and also like at that show was like, who's the Birds? Roger McGuinn.
Yeah, McGuinn was part of that tour.
Mitchell, Mick Ronson was on that stage. I didn't know who any of those people were, and I, later became fans of Joni. And
right, but it's all like draws from this like year. Like that's so cool. I mean, that Bringing It All Back Home is like it's like someone telling you a secret. It's like it's got so much in it.
And it seemed like it was so from the past, but it was like 10 years old or 9 years old. It wasn't that old.
It's interesting how that the 70s seemed like such a distant time from the 60s, but now it seems like just like a second later. When
you're young. But also like now, like Susie Ronson lives across the street from me here. And like I go over there and play mixed guitars. And I was like, "I saw your husband." And she was on that tour too. And she's like, "We got paid in cocaine. We didn't get paid money anymore."
Back when cocaine was really cocaine.
Yeah, and she's like, the whole tour was insane. And like Bob was insane. Everybody was just on coke all the time.
Oh my God.
You could tell. Did you see that film, the Scorsese film?
I saw it recently, and I got so mad because I'm texting with Charles Mansfield, and I'm like, "Oh my God, Dylan had an affair with Sharon Stone when she was like 18." And he's like, "It's all fake."
There's a lot of fake in there.
This sucks. Like, why? It's like, it's such a great show. Like, why did you have to make it fake?
I don't know. I think they're having. That seemed very Dylan. Like it was like he wanted to have fun. Like
then I was like, I don't know what's real, and I just stopped watching it. I was like 3/4 through.
Oh. But you got to see the real thing at the time, so.
Yeah, it was great. It was fun.
I love that, like this, like your love affair with music. It was like obsession. And when did that obsession like turn into you writing your own songs?
I started late because I moved to my group of friends were like 2 years older than me when I was in college. So they all graduated and moved to New York. And at that point, I lost interest in college. I'd never had any interest anyway. And so I moved, and I moved up here. And I was never like a musician. And then they had a band. And I was just like hanging around their band. And then they wanted a guitar player. And I was like, I can play guitar. And I auditioned, and they're like, no, thank you. But then another friend of mine said, "You know how to play guitar? We should form a band." So we've had this hardcore band, and there was like 16-year-old girl I was working with, and she wrote like 16-year-old girl like angsty poetry, and I took it and put it to hardcore punk music, and like we played CBs, and you know it was like and then I had a falling out with the bass player who I was like fucking, and then me and the girl started doing acoustic music, doing all those hardcore songs, but on acoustic guitar in the West Village at those folk clubs. And then this guy came to me and he's like, I found this really cool place. And he took me over to Chameleon, where Latch was at the time. And as soon as I got there, I'm like, oh, this is my place. And then, so she and I started doing that stuff, those hardcore songs to an acoustic guitar at Chameleon with Latch in like 89.
Wow.
Something like that. And then I started writing songs. So I started writing songs like much later. I was like 28 when I wrote my first song.
Do you remember what your very first song?
Well, we also used to, actually, that's not true. I wrote a song in high school with this girl. We were like, went down by the railroad tracks and we had a jug of wine, and we wrote a song called Dreaming of You, which was very dirty. And then I didn't write another song.
Dirty dreaming.
It was like dreaming of you, wanting to screw. But we would do that song. But so I wrote that, co-wrote it when I was 16, and then I didn't write another song until I was like 27 or 8. And that song was, I think the first one I wrote was called What I Did on My Vacation, which was like, I took like a 1 year, almost a year sabbatical from New York, and I moved down to my parents' house in Florida, and like me and my boyfriend were trying to get off of heroin, and we're like, we'll both go here and we'll kick, and then we'll meet back up. And then like I moved out of my parents' house, and I called him from a payphone in front of the liquor store, and I'm like, I have a house now. And he's like, I've kind of met somebody, which I wasn't that upset about. But I had like 9 months there, which I just drank. I had a bicycle that had your feet went into stirrup, like strapped your feet in.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be riding my bike, and I'd come to a red light, and I would just fall over because I couldn't get my feet out of the strap. But it was just like a lost weekend of drinking. And then I moved back, and we got the band back together. And
so you kicked heroin by drinking a lot.
Yes. Now I hear people are like,
and writing songs.
I wasn't writing songs yet.
Oh,
That
okay.
was when I got back. But now people are kicking by this drug kratom, which is like.
I tried that. Do not try it.
You told me about it.
Yeah, it was terrible.
It was like,
I missed a gig because I didn't know what was happening. I was just all of a sudden nauseous, for like 8 hours or something. It was terrible. Everything felt great for like, I don't know, it must have been like 45 minutes. And I'm just like, you know what? I think this is what it feels like to not have any anxiety. This might be the drug for me. I've never felt no anxiety before. All that shit I was feeling before, that was anxiety. Right now, everything's terrific. I was just like, I can really dig this life thing. I can actually, I think I might dig it. And then it's like, oh no. and then I had to run into the house. I'm like, please God, let me park my car before I, and not puke before I get into the house. And I parked all crazy, and I ran to the house and puked, and then had to lay down for like 6 hours. And I missed the John S. Hall gig down like 2 blocks from me. I missed.
how long did the good part last?
It was only like, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour 15, something like that. It was a good hour 15.
Do you know how many grams you took?
I don't know. I was at a friend's house, and her husband had it, and she was like, "Oh yeah, you take this," and I'm like, "Okay, I'll try it." And I'm like, I like herbs.
It's a plant.
No one fucking
It's a
told me.
tree. It's just leaves, but I think it's going to be illegal soon. It's like
Really?
K2.
Oh my Lord. So I'm sorry, but you mentioned it because you tried it, or?
Now people are kicking opioids with it. People are
Oh, with it,
swearing by
right.
it.
Yeah.
But the other people going, but it's addictive also. Like you can become addicted to it and have to do it every day. So
Oh my Lord.
remember when K2 happened near your house in Bushwick, the K2 Alley?
No.
It was like by the Myrtle Broadway stop. There was a deli that
Oh
sold.
yeah. And then people
it was
were
on the
going crazy on
news.
that shit.
Yeah, and there was like all these zombies wandering around on K2.
Yeah, the zombies of Bushwick. It was scary, and now things are scary in like lots of other ways. How have you responded to the quarantine stuff? You know, speaking of scary, and also Black Lives Matter, and like, has it affected your songwriting? And
Well, I've like I told you, I mean, the reason I think we're doing is like, I'm done with everything.
are you still done with everything? Is that
I
for
think
real?
so. But that, like Corona, I'm like, I was on unemployment and I was getting the supplement. So I'm like, this is great. I'm making so much money. And then my unemployment has run out, but I got a job offer today for this lady said, can you paint a room in my apartment? And I was like, yes, I can come up tomorrow and take a look. And then she sent me another letter. I've been doing this 20 years. She had so many red flags in the email. The one red flag is like, it should only take one coat. It should only take X amount of time. Anytime they tell you how much they think it, but her opening line is, I want to do as little as possible and save money to make it. And then I looked at the apartment and it rents for $15,000 a month. And I'm like, your opening line is you don't want to spend much money. So I'm going to write to her and go like, I'm sorry, I'm all booked up. But and the Black Lives Matter, you know, I live right by Union Square, and it's like it was in front of my building like every day. And I got in trouble on Facebook because like there's helicopters over my apartment and people are screaming. Anytime I went downstairs, people are screaming, and I'm like, I'm right on. I'm like down with you. And then one day I'm like, what if all these people just for one day, because they were doing it every day, like thousands of people went and did something great, something cool somewhere else, and everyone's like, Ray is a racist. Ray hates like Black Lives Matter. And they're like, you old men like you. Oh, somebody said if we listened to Ray, we'd still have segregated bathrooms. And I talked to my AA sponsor, and he's like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. You're never gonna post on Facebook ever again.
What did you post?
I posted, what if all these people who are like so great, what if instead of marching for the 49th day screaming, what if everybody did something else, like volunteered to do something else? Like thousands of people putting all that energy into like some great project, taking every day of the protest, we take Wednesday off and we like go volunteer at X. And then I was like painted as like this like person who hated the protest and was like right-wing crazy old man.
You know,
Yeah, and like,
it's actually a great idea, though.
I mean, it should be.
It's a lot of, it's like
it'll be
all
done.
those young people, all that energy, like, wow, this could really change the world.
You have an interesting like history, like you. I remember the song that you did for How to Make White People Laugh. You were
Yeah.
talking about how I think it was like you were 34 or something before you worked with white people. Is that what you
Yeah,
you said?
I always had jobs where I was the only white person at my job for some
And you were
reason.
used to being the ambassador,
I
and then
would
all
be
of a
like,
sudden you were
yeah,
the
they would like,
devil.
yeah. Then I was like with these white people, and I'm like, white people are weird to work with. They're like, they're different. You know, they're different at work, and I don't know. And, you know, I was trying to be humorous, but the thing in that song was, I had to call my sister and like verify some of this. We had in my town we had a maypole dance, which is like an old tradition of like goes way back in England.
Yeah.
They dance around a maypole. So they would have these little white girls. I guess you were like 10 years old, and you know it was like a society thing if you were allowed to be one. And they danced around and they sang "In an English Country Garden," and it was an honor to be one of these girls. And it was a public event in a public park, and it was called Springtime Tallahassee. And so at some point, I think it was 1970, they were like, why are there no black girls ever allowed in this? If this is going to be a public thing, it has to be open to everybody. And so the group that organized it said, if that's how you want it to be, then we're not going to do it anymore.
Oh, so they stopped.
Wow.
They were just like, okay, we won't ever do it again. Now it's back again, and it's you know everybody in the town. But that was their response was like, okay, we won't do it. And I thought that's so fucked up.
Right. But they were just saying how they were. They were like, wait a second, we're racist. We're not going to do that.
Yeah.
No, we got to find other people to do that.
What it was, there was actual little girls who were like, I guess like baby Rosa Parks. They were like,
Yeah.
I want
Hello.
to be in the event. And they're like, oh, if we are by law required to have you in it, then we just won't have it. And like to a 10-year-old person,
know.
that must be like
Sure.
so fucked up. Like I'm sure they would be like my age, and I'm sure they still remember that to this day.
I have a question about your song.
Yeah.
Another question about your song for that show. There's like a point in your song where you say you talk about being the devil, and then you talk about being a gay person in a gay man in a straight man's body, a black man in a white man's body, and then you say something like, "I'm a human trying." I couldn't make out the
I'm
word.
a human turducken.
Oh, turducken. Okay. It was really funny. Everybody was laughing. I was like, and I could hear myself laughing. And I was like, okay, I heard the word at the time, but then I couldn't hear it in the recording. I'm like, turducken. Okay, great.
I was taking
Oh,
liberties.
that's hilarious. It was hilarious. I love that about your songs.
I'm just taking some liberties. Like I'm a white man and a black or whatever, and I'm a gay. I get a lot of people like don't believe I'm straight, and they're like, well, openly say. I mean, don't believe I'm gay, and they're like, they'll openly say that, which is just such a weird thing to say. I've got that my whole life.
Okay. So you're used to being a turducken.
First of all, I want to say, I think the Florida bashing is so played out and tired. I know we've got our quirks and weirdness. So does Rhode Island. At least we're not boring like Saskatchewan. I think y'all are just jealous. Because we're surrounded by beautiful beaches. And our name translates into land of flowers. The land of flowers. Yeah. What does New York translate it? Rest my case. I'm just noodling around. I'm just noodling around. I'm just noodling around. Thinking about times when I've been in other countries and I've just felt so invisible, lost. At the same time, just felt like I was standing there so bad. I also want to say, countries are real places with real citizens. Race is a made-up word, yeah. Race is a made-up word, yeah. Race is a made-up word. Made up by racists. Made up by racists. Racist white people. I was 32 years old before I ever worked with white people. Let me tell you, that was a fucking shock. Yeah. I had always been the ambassador. Yes, we do get cold. Now I'm in there with them. Now I'm right there in there with them. I was the devil. I was the devil. I used to be black, just like Negan. I feel you, sister. Assalamu alaikum. Actually, I still am. I'm a black guy inside of a white guy. I'm a gay guy inside of a straight guy. Yeah, that's how I feel most of the time. I'm a human turned on. Don't eat me. Eat me. My father's family came from Turkey. They moved to Scotland a long, long time ago. Before Muhammad thought that God was talking to him, but not before Jesus thought that he was God. Yeah, so are we Turkish? Or are we Scottish? Who cares? Big deal. Well, it's a big deal to my dad because he belongs to the Scottish Society. In the South, if you say, I belong to the Scottish Society, we're having a day of Scottish games and food, what that really means is, I belong to the White Society, we're having a day of white games and food. Yeah, it means there's going to be a really terrible day. They used to have a maypole dance in Tallahassee. They wrapped up crepe paper around that pole every spring. One year, two little black girls wanted to be involved in the dance. They told them, we would rather never, ever do this again than have you involved in our thing. How do you think those little girls felt? How do you think those little girls felt when they went home that night? Probably went home, went to their rooms, closed the door, said. Probably went home, went to their rooms, closed the door, and said, fuck yeah, we burned your stupid fucking maypole down. We burned your stupid fucking maypole party down. Fuck you white people, fuck you white people, fuck you white people. Who goes to TED Talks where our TED Talks held? Y'all went to TED Talks, bunch of stupid. Who is TED?
Songs that, like, once I got a laugh on that first one, I like went for laughs a lot of times with
And you get them.
with book club. Even Pride and Prejudice, I got laughs.
Oh yeah, you totally did. Are you kidding? You started out with that whole story
like
about
John-
marrying for money, and like also texting with John S. Hall
Yeah.
during his Tinder dates.
Yeah, which he says they're not Tindergates, they were like plenty of fish or whatever he was.
And how the women were really rich, and you said, you text back, sell that dick, make
Yeah.
that money.
He's like, I think she voted for Trump. I'm like, that's none of your business. He's got a rich girlfriend now. You know, he always has these rich girlfriends because his parameters are he wants a woman who lives in Manhattan, is single, and is like 35 to 60. I'm like,
Right.
that you're gonna get rich. What really? Like, you can get some really rich women,
Right. That criteria means rich woman usually.
or like somebody with a rent stabilized apartment.
Yeah.
But usually, I mean, a lot of times they would like own a brownstone.
Wow. Go, John. Sell that dick. Make that money.
This book is about whether to get married for love or money. And I think I'm for money. I got married a couple of years ago. Good choice. For money. And an apartment. I didn't get either one of them. I'm broke. John Hall used to text me when he was on Tinder dates and say, oh my God, this woman is so fucking rich. And I text back, sell that dick. Get that money. I say, I think she voted for Trump. I say, that is none of your business. Don't bring up politics, get that money. I started having sex for money when I was like 13. Then I fucked that up like 14, 15, 16. Those are my big earning years. I didn't really treat it like a business. I wish my parents would have helped me out with that. I didn't really know. I'd do it for free. There is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. And however little known the feelings or views of such a man may be on his first entry in the neighborhood, this truth is so well fixed in the minds of the surrounding families that he's considered as the rightful property of someone other of their daughters. For love or money, love or money, love or money. Oh my dear Mr. Bennett, said his lady to him one day, have you heard that Netherfield Park is let it last? Mr. Bennett replied that he had not. Oh, but it is, for Mrs. Long has just been here and told me all about it. Mr. Bennett made no answer. Do you want to know who's taking it? Or you want to tell me? I have no objection to hearing it. Love or money, love or money, oh, love or money. My wedding was so sad that I was just standing there thinking, what if I'm want to meet someone and fall in love. Now I'm gonna have to get divorced. How do you do that? Why, my dear, you must know, Mrs. Long said Netherfield was taken by a young man of a large fortune from the north of England, and that he came down on Monday in a chaise and four to see the place, and he was so delighted with it. He agreed with Mr. Morris immediately to take possession before Michaelmas, and his servants are to be in the house by the end of the week. Love or money, oh, what is his name? Bingley. Is he married or single? Oh, single, dear, single man of a large fortune, 4,000 or 5,000. What a fine thing for others. Oh, how so? How can it affect them? My dear Mr. Bennett, how can you be so tiresome? Must know that I was thinking of him marrying one of them. Love or money, love or money, love or money, love or money.
So are you funnier for the Bushwick Book Club songs than you are for your normal set? Do you
Yeah,
tell
I
more
think
stories
so.
in Bushwick Book Club?
Yeah, I get like people say like there's humor in your. I like there's humor in your lyrics, but it's more turned up at Bushwick Book Club.
It sure is. I love that though, because it come out so naturally too. All the stories and
And
I love having you. I love bringing you in because, like, it's almost guaranteed it's going to be a moment of ease, no matter what it is. Like, you're the only one of the very few people I know who can do a whole song about the experience of reading the book, and just about reading it, not even about the book, but just the experience of reading the book.
sometimes that was my only choice.
Yeah, right. And have it be like really interesting and like engaging and captivating, and like it's not and you're so you're glad for that moment and glad to hear the song.
Well,
You
it
know?
seems like when you perform, there's a certain like beatific like this pinpoint of joy that you seem to emanate.
Yeah, you always bring that.
And like when we look at like photos of the performers when we're putting it together, like when you shoot people when they're singing, a lot of times they're like making like a craggy like tense face when they're making a vowel sound, but your pictures are always like this glowing, beautifully
Smiling.
smiling person, and you have this way of like giving off this amazing energy when you're singing, and it really comes through. Like when you did the Walt Whitman show, how did you? It seemed like you sort of evoked Walt Whitman.
Well, that was a life-changing experience for me because, like, I think I spoke about that. I was, for some reason, unfamiliar with Whitman. I was very familiar with like a lot of poets, and I've read a lot of poetry, but maybe because they pushed it in school, I was like, I'm not going to read what you try to force me in school. But I became aware of Walt Whitman and his work for the first time just before that. So I went in deep with that, and I could I what's the word? I saw myself in Whitman in a lot of ways. I could like.
In a cave beneath the sidewalk, where the sweet flag flower grows, the darkness between the two vaults, down at Fife, so everybody goes. In the magic of the fairies on the river, the dark so dark at night, streets filled with mechanics, so I have loved soldiers and sailors, and I remember everyone. I have laid beside the rivers, my body glistening in the sun. send this song out to the far future, the stagecoach drivers, everyone. I am the ultimate Broadway rambler. Ramble on. I'm going down to Camden, gonna buy a little house, just hang around. Find a sweet young man to help me, for the 6th time, write it down. Oh, when I was young and filled with electricity and coming, I could feel the light burning inside me, blowing me down these Brooklyn streets. Oh, when I was young and filled with electricity and coming, I could feel the light burning inside me, leading me down these Brooklyn streets. Oh, when I was young and filled with electricity and coming, I could feel the light burning inside me, blowing me down these Brooklyn streets.
I'm not sure what, but also with the being on stage, like that's what like the happiest moments in my life are Bushwick Book Club being on stage. And that's why when I stopped playing gigs, because I was not having a good time at gigs, I'm like, I'm having this experience at Bushwick Book Club, I'm having this experience at gigs. So I think I'm going to stop gigs. And that was a great decision because I was getting enough out of doing Bushwick Book Club like every 2 months than I was getting out of doing like however many gigs I could do.
Wow.
And some of that,
I didn't
like
know
stage
that.
stuff, I watched John and like I watched him on stage and how he behaves on stage, how he looks, and he like opens himself up and he like, I don't know, he does some trick where it's like a stagecraft trick, and I emulated that. I watched him and I tried to do what he does, and it came out in the way that I do it. I watched Robbie Williams. I tried to like see what he does on stage because he does that too. I like those kind of big performers, and like that's how you do it. So let me try to do it. So that's part of what I'm doing when you see me that like I'm happy and like glowing, like I'm trying to glow.
That's
Does
really
John-
cool.
Does
I asked
John
John
know
if-
that he influenced you so much?
Oh yeah, I asked him if I told him all that, and I was like, "Did you go to and have any theater training, any actor training?" And he said no, but he hung out like all his friends went to the High School for Performing Arts, so that was his crew. But he didn't go there, but he was around them. And I also one time, John, when he was living here, he's like, "How many times do you rehearse your song for Bushwick Book Club?" Because he always has rehearsed his once or none. He arrives very unprepared. I'm like 100. I've always done my song like 100 times with no mistakes before I do it. Like I won't do it without knowing it. And I try to learn I couldn't learn the lyrics for Pride and Prejudice because it was just the book. My song was just verbatim the opening paragraphs of the book, opening like 4 pages. I couldn't memorize that, but I like to memorize it, and I like to have it completely rehearsed, and sometimes I still fuck up. But yeah, he was like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Wow, that's interesting because it always seems so kind of free-flowing stream of consciousness, or often does, and that's part of the exciting thing because you think that it's just, it's all like happening in that, feels like it's all happening in that moment and that it could go anywhere.
That's why I'm able to be casual there because I've rehearsed it so much.
Yeah, I really admire that. That's great.
Do you remember the first time that you knew that you were a performer, though? Did you know from when you were a little kid, or did you just discover that as an adult?
No, even when I was performing with Latch at Chameleon, I wasn't the same. It was when I went to Sidewalk, like the first open mic that I played, and it was like, a lot of people talk about that night, but that was the first time I'd gotten such a reaction, and I could feel myself as a performer, like conveying something and getting it back. I don't remember that when I was young, and that was like I had one song. I'd written one song, which was Connecticut Highways, and I played that, and then I was very scared, and I stepped off the stage and I left the room, and Latch and Ben followed. They're like, "Do you want to do a show here?" I'm like, "No." And then
They offered you a show after your first time there?
and yeah,
Oh my
playing one
God.
song, and
That
then
never happens.
I left and I went out on the street. I just had to get out of there, and they followed me out. Ben and Latch followed me, and they're like, "Why won't you do a show?" And I'm like, "Because I only have one song." And they're like, "Okay, we'll keep in touch." But that was and like everyone who was there was like, that was like such a memorable night of like, you just like shocked the audience, and then you walked off stage and you said no, and then I turned around, they had all come outside to see like where Ben and Latch went. We're all out on the sidewalk, and then I walked away.
That's hilarious.
That's all part of the show, kind of.
It was like
Drama.
And then I had like 2 songs, then I had 3 songs, and actually I bought some new speakers today. They just arrived today. This is the first time I've ever had nice
Let
speakers
me
for
see
my
those speakers.
what's it?
Let me see those speakers again. Okay, cool. I need some new speakers.
They were $100, and I like treated myself to them, and I listened to my first album just before I talked to you, which I haven't listened to in like 8 years, and I was kind of impressed with that. Like, I did that, and that all the songs flow, like the sequence really works, and they're all like of a body of work. And I was like kind of impressed with myself. I did that with like not knowing what I was doing, just like, you know how songs write themselves. Of like, I didn't have a choice but to write those first songs, which is like the best kind.
Yeah. I mean, it's still, no matter how experienced you are at writing, you're still just someone who looks at the blank page and goes, I'm starting. You know what I mean? How do you respond to that when you're working on a song? Do you like riff something and sort of like play some music first and then start rolling with some words, or do you write down a bunch of words first, or how do you look at that blank page and start?
Well, every song that I've completed, which is not to say everything I've ever started to write, but every song that's been completed is I've noticed this after 10 years of doing it. I've written in a moving vehicle, whether a train, a plane, or
Oh, wow.
And I write on my iPhone the song, and it's pretty much complete. And then I come home, and I never think about the music. I just start playing chords and singing what's on my iPhone, and then edit those words a bit to make them, fit in there. That's how every song that I've completed has been written, of like writing on a moving vehicle and then putting it to music later.
So without the moving vehicles, when we've been in lockdown or quarantine, how has it happened?
Yeah, I'm not writing.
You're not?
No.
Well, what if we book you for another Bushwick Book Club show? It'll force you to write. It'll force you to find a way to write.
Well, when is it? Wait, not in real life, on Zoom?
On Zoom. We're
In
doing
real
Zoom
life, you
shows.
did the
live
stray
stream.
one. You did the stray one, remember?
Yeah, that was fun.
So how did you write that one?
Actually, so that's not true. I wrote that one sitting right here. Reading. I read the book. I read the reviews of the book, and I read
You
about
actually
her.
wrote sitting down on a non-moving
I did.
vehicle.
That's a rarity. Maybe no, I did. I said it right. I wrote it right here.
You could do it again. I think I'm gonna have to book you for the next one.
On the day that Tanya Marquardt turned 16, she ran away from home. She'd been living in Port Alberni with her mom who'd moved there to escape her dad. Tanya was troubled, filled with anger at her mom, and wanted to be on her own. She found a new kind of family in the Vancouver goth punk scene. Sometimes you're with a friend or a lover, lying in bed, trying to find the thread that binds these stories together, whether for the world or just in your head. When my grandma was 16, she was married with a child, pregnant, nowhere to stay. An alcoholic, abusive husband. There would be 4 more born before he ran away. 1931, oh, she never worked that out. And the actions of those two are still with me today. Sometimes you're with a friend or a lover, lying in bed, trying to find the thread that binds these stories together. Whether for the world or in your head, a diary is a secret and sacred thing. The language is intimate and close, just like a friend. There's a pattern there to figure out. There's a rhythm, a feeling, and a craft. Memories laid out there on the floor, so easy to see, all pink and black. I'm 59, I still want to run away. At this point there's no going back. Sometimes you're with a friend or a lover, lying in bed, trying to find the thread that binds these stories together. Whether in the world or just in your head. On the day the 10-year mark where I turned 16, she ran away from home.
I just got some bad news that like I'm involved in this thing called Dopey, and we have this Dopey convention, and we did it in October, and people come from all over the world, and then it was going to be in LA in May, and it got canceled. But we thought, well, the next one, the last one was in October in New York. We're like, the next one's going to be, we had booked the hall in Malibu. We had a place in Malibu, and we were all ready to go, and it just got canceled. I'm like, oh, it's going to be virtual. Of course it got canceled, but I told somebody, like, everybody's like, Coachella got, this is like in March, like Coachella got canceled. I'm like, DopeyCon got canceled.
What's DopeyCon?
It's like a drug addict, alcoholic podcast, and we got together and played music and spoke, and it just like was a huge success. And so everybody, that was the first one, and everybody's very hyped for the next one, and it's not going to happen.
Sorry.
Dopey.
Sorry. Oh,
There it
Dopey.
is.
So are they all like former addicts like you?
Some of them are active.
Oh, okay. So active and former.
Some of them write to, like, I get people like call me at like 1 a.m, and they're like, hi, and they're like, I need help. Can you help me? And I get people like, can you send me money? I'm broke. Can you send me money?
Right.
Like, it's one thing, like in the old days, like people, you couldn't hear somebody on the radio and then contact them via Facebook. I mean, I could make it so you can't, but I didn't. But like, I couldn't like contact Gordon Lightfoot and go like, I love your music. Like, can you loan me some money? What's the book for the next book club?
It's William Melvin Kelly. It's a book of short stories of his. And he was a black writer in I think he published his first book in the 60s and early 60s, and it got a lot of attention, and then he ended up leaving the country after Malcolm X was assassinated and tried to raise his family in Paris, and then moved to Jamaica, and then ended up coming back to Harlem in the 70s and raised his family there. And he continued to write, but didn't publish as much as he wrote. yeah, his work just didn't get as much attention as it warranted.
Yeah.
And then he ended up teaching creative writing at Sarah Lawrence. And then he
Oh.
died in 2017. Yeah.
I wonder if any of our friends had him as a professor. You know, we have a lot of friends that
Well,
went to
Charlie
Sarah.
knows his daughter.
Yeah,
Oh.
we used
Yeah,
to be
from
neighbors.
City Island. And we're in touch with his daughter, Jessie, and she's going to be speaking at the show.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always like it when there's like, or the author or, you know, somebody is like involved with that. It's very cool. And, you know, to think of like writers, like as performers, even though like we're not performing live, but we get to perform our songs in front of people, whether it's a small or large audience. But if you're a writer working at home, that must feel so weird. The only thing you can judge it by is sales. And if there's no sales, then you just get sales and reviews. And if those aren't happening, then you're just like working in the dark. Like I'm just going to throw this out there because I need to or want to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're teaching, you might get some feedback from your students, but that must be so hard to like produce art and just get nothing back.
Sure. I mean, and some of our most beloved classics started out that way too. Like even Moby Dick,
Yeah.
it was panned and it was just thumbs down from everybody, you know,
Yeah.
until something happened later on. But it wasn't for many years until it gained like such popularity.
Yeah,
And
so
same
many.
thing with Dune, that book.
Oh, yeah?
He couldn't get it published for years.
Oh, I didn't know
Frank
that.
Herbert, is that it?
Frank
Yeah,
Herbert.
couldn't get it published for years, and then finally did, and then it became this cult classic and everything.
And then with music too, you wonder like
Yeah.
how many people, well, now everything is like, if it's on the internet, people will find it. I think of like Nick Drake, who was like lost
Yeah.
and then rediscovered. But like, was Hunky Dory was a huge flop. And like, if Bowie had like died after Hunky Dory, like, would that have been remembered? Now it's like, you know, listed as a great album, but like, you wonder like what that was like to feel like, I don't know if he knew, like I've written some great songs and the record, I'm signed to a label, the record company released it and we got nothing back.
Right.
That must have felt weird.
I mean, Pet Sounds was a flop, you know.
That
it's
sounds,
like,
yeah. On the Dopey podcast recently, my co-host asked me, Pet Sounds or Sgt. Pepper? And I'm like, that's the wrong question. Well, Pet Sounds, but it's Pet Sounds or Rubber Soul. It's Sgt. Pepper or Smile, if you want
Right.
to ask which or which.
they were more aligned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to listen to this podcast. You do it how often?
Every week.
Every week. Wow.
Oh,
I
wow.
can't believe I
You wanna
didn't know that. And I
if you
haven't.
want to hear me crying and losing my mind,
How long is a podcast? Like an hour long, or?
well, we talk for an hour and then we have a guest. Our dream guest is Dylan, which we're trying to get.
That's exciting.
Did you listen to the new record?
Yes. Oh my God. I'm still like, I talk to Charles a lot. Charles is a Dylan freak, and like, I still don't know what to make of it. You know, I don't know whether I honestly can't tell if it's terrible or great. I honestly can't tell.
Yeah. It's,
What do
I
you
mean, that's
think,
like,
Charlie?
I think that's a good thing. I mean, it's so sprawling. I think it's great that he's doing something right now. It feels very
Yeah.
immediate.
Yeah.
So that means it's good, but I don't know what to make of it. I don't like all of it, but I like it.
Maybe it
I
takes
like-
multiple listens.
Yeah, definitely.
I've listened multiple times. I like that it's just so weird, and so it's not generic, you know, late period Dylan. It's something else.
Right. It is something else. And it's
I think
When did
like,
it come
older.
out?
I think it's a few years old. I think it may be 5 or 6 years old also.
well, he just started releasing the songs during the pandemic, and then it came out in like June, I think,
Yeah.
Oh.
the whole record.
It's got the big one is Murder Most Foul, which is like 18 minutes long, and it's like Jason Trachtenberg wrote the song. It's about it's a Kennedy conspiracy song.
What was your last recording, Ray?
I did a homemade album of like a bunch of songs I had written that I was going to record in Dublin. They were like demos, and then I'm just like, fuck it. I was supposed to I had shows booked in Dublin in April, and we were going to tour around Ireland, and then I was going to go into the studio and we were going to record, and that didn't happen. And then I was like, well, I'll definitely be there in October for my 60th birthday, and we'll have a show. And then that's not happening. So I just released the demos. It was called, I forgot what it was called. But that was the last thing I
I'll have
did.
to
I
listen
just
to
recorded it at home, and then I recorded with Summer, like that Walt Whitman song. I recorded, and I recorded
Cool.
with Bob, like 3 songs.
That's nice.
Bushwick Book Club song. Then when I was in a crack house motel in Florida, I released the Bushwick Book Club song called whatever it was.
Right from the Crack House Motel.
Yeah, I checked in.
Fresh
I,
from the Crack House Motel.
I went down to like
Club. Coming
my
at you.
mother was in assisted living and she was like having problems, and I went down and I was like, let me check into the cheapest motel I can find. Oh, this is cool. It's right downtown, so I can walk to all the restaurants, and I'll be downtown. And I found out it's where the government puts people who are like in trouble and they don't have cars. So it's a Motel 6, but it was a homeless shelter. And I walked in there, I'm like, whoa, shit is going down here. And by the end of that night, I was smoking crack.
Oh my God. Oh my God. And releasing an album. Yeah.
I woke up one morning and I was completely naked and my door was wide open.
Ray, I'm so glad you're out of that crack house.
Somebody called John Hall and was like, Ray is smoking crack in Florida. And then John called and I'm like, and then I'm in with my mother and like all these people who work there, and they're all like, "You're such a great son. You're such a perfect son." I'm like, I'm a degenerate.
How did you get out of there?
I thought I was gonna die there. I honestly thought I was gonna die, and like I got on the E train to go to Florida in early February, and I was crying at 5 a.m. on the E train all the way to the JFK, and then I got on a JetBlue, which on the subway, like, okay, people are not gonna like ask you if you're okay if you're crying because you're insane. But when you're on JetBlue and you're sitting there just, somebody might say, "Sir, are you okay?" But nobody said anything.
Oh my God.
And then I landed in Jacksonville. I drove to Tallahassee, and then checked into the crack house. But I survived it.
So glad you checked out.
Wow.
And I got a new sponsor who's like, just like not having any shit at all. Like he's so great. We've been like working on stuff, and like it was Bob's birthday like 4 days ago, and I'm thinking about wishing Bob a happy birthday, and he's like,
No.
you are never gonna do that.
Don't know.
You're
not posting to Facebook, and you are not going to wish Bob happy. Very good sponsor.
Yeah, he's great.
Cool.
It was like John found him for me. Like John found this new guy, which was like out of the
That's
blue.
awesome. That's really good. Like, he's a good friend.
Yep.
I wanted to talk a little bit about your experiences performing live in Ireland, because I know you like it there so much, and I wanted to know like what you thought about the audiences there compared to other places, and I also wanted to talk to you about. I just want to mention your song for "You Were Never Really Here," and I don't know. Did you have other questions, Charlie?
No, I did my questions, and I'll just listen. Maybe I'll think of another one.
Of course you will.
You were never really here. Was that the song that the guy wherever he went around killing people?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that song was amazing because you brought like it was like, because the sentiment and the words were so extreme, because the book was really extreme, and yet you
Yeah.
brought the sweetness to it, and you were singing from that character's point of view. That was just really interesting.
I watched that movie, and he's no question killing people with a hammer, like he kills them. And then
Yeah.
the author was at the event, and just before I played, he's like, the way I wrote this was like, he doesn't actually kill anybody. He just disables them and stops them from interfering. I'm like, he like killed them in the movie. He killed them.
I thought
I'm
he
like,
killed them too.
my song is called Kill, 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 Kill. I'm like, oh
Wait
no.
a second. I just wanted to read a couple of lines from that song because I thought it was so beautiful. If I was your man, I would bring it. If I had a song, I would sing it. If I had a bell, I would ring it. If I had a hammer, I would kill. I would kill. And like you read those lyrics, and it sounds like so extreme and ridiculous, but the way you performed it was just transformed it into this other kind of beauty, even within the ridiculous or the extremeness of it. And that was just a neat thing that you do in your songs.
I'm a soldier, I'm a veteran, I'm a freelancer, I am unafraid of violence. Kill, kill, kill for rainbow, kill for rainbow. What do I know? I know I'm no longer functioning inside a norm. I can't hold down a government job. There's consequences from every single action. If you want me, find me on Death Chan. Death Chan, I'm doing what I can. I can kill, 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 kill. If I was your man, I would bring it. If I had a song, I would sing it. If I had a bell, I would ring it. If I had a hammer, I would kill. I would kill. I would kill. I would kill. Yeah. Jesus said, turn the other cheek. Buddha said, don't do anything. James Lennon said, you gotta forgive him, but sometimes you just gotta kill. Kill, kill, yeah, kill.
A lot of that is like inside my head is like a blender of like every song I've ever heard, like 60s pop growing up, and like that's like if I had a hammer, if I had all that stuff, you know, like a lot of sometimes my songs are like I'm quoting other songs, like not all the time, but a lot of times I'm quoting like Biggie, Jay-Z's like when I say I'm bigging up my brother. Not I was like I'm not. He's like, I'm not stealing rhymes, I'm bigging up my brother. That's Jay-Z. He was accused of like stealing stuff. And he's like, when I quote somebody in a song, I'm like praising them. I'm not trying to steal the line. And I'm very clearly like, how could I steal this line? He said, when I say a big line, I'm bigging up my brother. That was the line. And then performing in Ireland they're more appreciative. They're more polite. And the clubs pay you, like they always pay you what they said, sometimes more. And it's a different, I don't know. And somebody told me that the reason they like me is because they don't have role models of like such a repressed society, especially the older generation like me. So they don't have a model of like an old person who's like, I don't give a fuck about whatever society thinks. And this is me and deal with it. They just don't have that. People are like afraid to be themselves. And you know, there's still like the Catholic Church is like looming large, even over people that are like, fuck the church, but it's still like you can't get it out of you, you know, if you were raised with it. And so they like that about me, but they're just like, I don't know, they seem more appreciative and more, they have that tradition of like literature and words and that they pay you and that they're polite about it, except that one fucking club, Shanae, which they wouldn't pay us, but I got like 2 songs out of them not paying, and like I got a lot of mileage out of them not paying.
Out of the experience, that's good. But it's interesting too that you were a really shy kid, and now here you are, and you're like, and you perform, and you kind of embody this kind of ease and acceptance of yourself that affects other people. But it's interesting that you started out as a really shy kid.
Well, I think about that sometimes of like, I was like, you know, that kind of, I mean, maybe you guys were like this too. Like if you asked you to publicly speak, you were incapable. Like you would just like frozen. That's how I was. And I was like that for quite a while. And then I don't know why, but that went away. And the more it went away, the more it went away. And
now it's really away because now you have this alter ego in Rainbow. Or maybe it's not even alter. It's not alter. It's just
we're trying to figure out what to do with Rainbow. But and like Morgan Herringer said to me, she's like, how did you make it go away? Because she's like very shy on stage, and I was like, I don't know, it just went away. Something with time. I mean, you guys, did you ever have that? Because y'all aren't shy on stage.
I'm not so good. I'm fine when I'm performing, but talking between songs or telling a story before a song, I usually just like minimize it down to like 2 phrases, and
That's
then
such a
one,
fucking
two, three,
lie.
four, boing.
That is such a fucking lie. He's lying, by the way, for anyone listening.
Susan
He's
is like,
fucking
I
lying.
feel like that.
No, you go on and on sometimes, like, and you, and but it's interesting because then you get to hear more about like what went into your song and what your process was like, and I feel like you've become a lot more comfortable with that, and you have like
Some
interesting,
nights are better than others, but
whatever,
yeah.
and yeah, but
Susan's
I have
such
not.
a natural. Were you
Well,
always like that on stage?
um, that's sometimes my most comfortable way of that's my most comfortable mode of social interaction
Yeah.
sometimes is being on stage. Otherwise, if I don't have an accordion in front of me, I feel really awkward just making small talk or just trying to interact with somebody and have a conversation. But if I'm on a stage, it's like it's different because then it's like, oh, you have permission. People expect you to talk. That's your job. You're there to engage with the audience. So, so then it's like I have this permission, and I'll just run with that permission. But if I don't have the permission, I don't really know what to do. Often, I
We
find.
we did with the Dopey podcast. We did a festival in West Virginia, and there was like 10,000 people there. And my co-host is like, "I'm really scared. What's the biggest crowd you've ever played in front of?" I'm like, I thought of St. Mark's Church. I'm like, 500, but like, what's the difference between 500 and 10,000? But then he was really nervous, but it was fine. We worked it out. His opening line was, "I just raised the Jewish population of West Virginia by 100%."
Yeah, that's a great opening line. You can't lose with an opening line like that. That
And
guy's
he won
fucking
them
natural.
over right then.
That's awesome. I miss that aspect about performing live is just the immediate feedback thing where it's like, oh, you get a laugh, you're doing okay, you keep going.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, that's
someday.
the nice thing with Bushwick Book Club is you get all the perks of doing a gig, but it's not your gig, and you don't have any responsibility for like bringing people or anything bad about the night. Like the club won't go like we didn't sell drinks or this. Like you
Sometimes
get
they
all the
do.
They
benefits.
do, yeah.
I get that.
Susan gets it.
Susan gets it. She takes it. She takes the brunt.
Sometimes. Um,
I like it when people come. I'm always surprised when people do come, and then they love the whole night. They come. I mean, it'd be like friends of mine will come, and they don't know. They just know I'm doing a song. I'm like, I'm doing one song in a night of other things. It's great, but just so you know. And then they just love the whole night.
yeah. It's because
That's
everyone's so great, and there's like a lot of variety. If you like variety, I feel like Bushwick Book Club shows are for you.
What's happening with Barbess?
I think, that reminds me, I want to catch what they're doing on Barbez because they're now streaming live shows from that back room. And they do it like, I think around 6:30, 6-ish, 6:37, something like that. It's not like all night, but it's like maybe one act or two, like so maybe a couple hours or something at most.
Huh.
I know
I want to watch
Small-
that.
Smalls is doing that. Smalls Jazz Club is doing that.
Okay. Charlie and I were going to play at Tompkins Square Park because that band Pink Clouds, do you know Cloudy from Pink
Oh yeah,
Clouds?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's been playing regular sets there with his full band, and he brings like little amplifiers. And you should play there too, Ray.
Saw that. I wanted to go over and see him. I think his story is so interesting because like for some reason I played quite a few gigs with his previous incarnation. I can't remember, but he was in a character in his previous band.
I can't
and-
imagine him not as Pink Clouds, but go ahead.
No, he was his face was painted red and he had double horns and he had a suit and it was very similar music. The music has not changed, but he switched over to Claudio and changed the outfit and it's blown up. It's like people love it.
Wow.
It's so weird.
Wow.
Like
Wear the
it's
right outfit, and
same thing, same person, and just
That's
changed.
that's fascinating.
That's really great information. I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and have you
We just
seen
need
his
to wear different clothes, Charlie, you and I.
he started
Keep translating.
busking at the Delancey Street station, and they have a video of them they have a fake F train coming through the band. It's so cool. I mean, they do a lot with like no money, like their sets,
Yeah,
but like they get a big bang for their buck out of
They're really talented, too.
really good.
yeah, yeah. I
Ray,
love
so
that.
you're not going to stop performing. I mean, how real is this? Because like, I'm going to book you, so that means you're going to be performing.
I'll do Bushwick Book Club. I'm just not going to do my own thing. I'm just like, I'm
So
done.
even if we like got you a spot on like at Tompkins Square Park on one of Pink Cloud's nights, like you wouldn't play that spot?
Yeah, I'd do that. I'll do that.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm just not gonna write new songs, and
Yes, you are. I'm going to ask you to write them.
No, I'll write a Bushwick Book Club song. I'm not gonna write my own.
Well.
I've completed it. I'm finished.
You could put out like an album of all your Bushwick Book Club songs too.
Well, I've put most of them on my albums.
Well, there you go.
At one point, they stopped being like kind of specific. That last album I put out had like 3 Bushwick Book Club songs on it.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's how it happens.
Yeah.
Right, Charlie?
They're like,
Yep.
listening to it, you wouldn't know. It's like, oh, this is a song about a book. It's just like a song.
I'm familiar with that.
Cool. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah, it's been really great.
Is there anything else you want to say on this audio podcast?
Kill for Rainbow.
Yes.
Okay. Kill for Rainbow. All right.
No, I love Bushwick Book Club, and it's been like since I've stopped performing. It's like I've loved having that as like my backup thing.
It's called
Well,
performing.
Well, it's nice talking to you
It's
guys.
really nice talking to you.
Yeah,
Let's
it's
go
really
for a walk
nice.
sometime or something. I don't know.
Okay.
You know?